All right. Well, team, here we get started. I want to let you know first that we do have our filter replacement sale going on this month. So all of our filters are 30% off. So if we got clients from the past that purchased the units, go right now because it's 30% off. So here's our schedule for the month. Tonight we have my dear friend Taiwan Hubbard. We'll talk about him a little bit. Next week on Thursday, we have Robert Centenary, who is a legendary author and a scientist, and he is fantastic. We got Thanksgiving, we're taking a little break, and then we're going to wrap up the month with Dr. Tyler, who is the founder of the amazing Molecular Hydrogen Institute. So you definitely want to make sure you're on that one. And then we'll be doing Mondays. I'm going to be talking about sales, branding, and marketing, and also products. So you want to come live because live is when you can interact. So if you're seeing this secondary, you definitely want to make sure you're making a point to come live. There's just a little bit about our speakers. I'm not going to go through that tonight because we want to respect every event's time here, but there's Tyler. Another thing here is we do have 2 different bonuses we just launched. So it's a 60-day bonus. The first bonus is this one right here. So you come in and you sell anywhere from $5,000 to $20,000 in 1 month and 30 days of product. This is not commission, this is actual product. So it'd be like 4 to 5 hydrogen deluxes, and you're gonna receive a $1,000 bonus. $10,000 is a $500 gift card bonus, and $5,000 is a $200 gift card bonus. Gift card bonus to the store, healthyhydration.com. So that's the first bonus. The second bonus here is going to be a team bonus. So you help 3 of your teammates sell $500 of product, and you're going to receive an additional $200 gift card. So I started everybody over. So everyone, the whole entire, there's 800 affiliates, almost 1,000 affiliates. All of them are started back at day 1 as of yesterday. So it's not too late. So you can take action on this. And we have a new Facebook group. If you haven't been to it already, it's Healthy Hydration Affiliate Group. And so we're in there constantly interacting with people. Here's the QR code. You can just scan that code. It'll take you right over there. And then I will put you in as soon as you scan the code, and you'll be in the queue. So that is first and foremost. The amazing Taiwan Hubbard is going to talk next. We're going to go through many different aspects, but I really want you guys to be understanding the difference between alkaline ionized water technology and hydrogen technology, because there seems to be a lot of confusion around that. So just give you a little background on Taiwan. Him and I have done he's got his channel, I've got my channel. So I've always been learning from him since like probably 9 to 10 years ago. It's been fun to kind of grow with him together, but he's always been someone I've looked up to. We did an event in, was that February? Yeah, no, it was April. It was April of this year in Vegas. We did the first ever Hydrogen University. So we had all of our speakers this month actually at our live event. And I learned so much. There's just so much knowledge that Taiwan has. His company, H2 Minutes, and his other company is H2, help me out, Taiwan, H2 Hub. Yes, thank you so much. And he basically brings in products, or companies like myself, sends products to him, and he unboxes them. And then he certifies them based on standards. And so he doesn't, approve everybody, but several of our products have already been through his approval process, and we are constantly working up new products to send to him as well. So we're wanting to get all of the products to go through him. So you've got quite a background. I want you to tell your story a little bit and how you got into the hydrogen space, because you came from the alkaline water technology. Then you experienced the hydrogen and knew that's the direction you wanted to go. But you also started with the KANGEN water, just like me, and several of us on here were also in the KANGEN business. So I'd love for you to shine some light on that and just tell us, where you were and where you're planning on going in the future, please.
Cool. Yeah. Hey, so Amanda, thanks for having me on. It's always a blessing to become to be out to be able to help educate about molecular hydrogen. So I'll go ahead and begin with my story, and I'll try to make it brief. Some of you might already know a little bit about my story if you came to that Vegas event. But anyway, this all started about a decade ago for me, and it all started with water ionizers. The KANGEN water unit, and my wife's crazy cousin. So I was actually playing football for a majority of my life. Played football for about 20 years. You might actually see some photos up here of me over there. And in the background of me playing ball. and I had aspirations to make it to the NFL, and that's what I was planning on doing. And I actually was pretty close to achieving that goal until hydrogen invaded my story. And so my wife's cousin introduced me to KANGEN water, and he came around talking about a bunch of boastful claims about this amazing water and what it can do for your health and everything else. And so I was pretty skeptical, to say the least, but I did try some after some persuasion. I tried some, and I had some health benefits. You know, I had some health benefits to my recovery. My recovery time was phenomenal. You know, and I noticed it. You know, after my training, and so that piqued my interest. But to be honest with you, I let I let it go. But it came back and found me. So it must have been part of my destiny because months later, the conversation got brought up again. And as Amanda already said, I put out a lot of information because I intake a lot of information. And so I have a mind that loves to learn. And so I wanted to figure out why this water worked for me and why everyone's talking about its effects. Is it, the alkaline pH and the microclustering and all this other stuff? So I started doing some digging, and I couldn't really figure it out. So I ended up running into a gentleman by the name of Randy Sharp, and he also runs H2 Analytics, which is kind of a hydrogen laboratory in Las Vegas. And me and him had a discussion, and he said, this is basic high school chemistry that they're doing with these water ionizers, and it's producing hydrogen gas. And so that set me on a trajectory to where I'm here today. So I started reading publications online for molecular hydrogen therapy, and I became utterly obsessed with it, spending countless hours reading articles and articles and articles to the point to where I became convicted about it and said, okay, this is a diamond in the rough and no one knows about it. And everyone in the Kangen water world was talking about everything but hydrogen. And so I was like, you guys got it all wrong, man. Hydrogen is the key. And so I started teaching people. Before I know it, I gained some notoriety, and that's all she wrote. I got hired by another company out in Florida to teach about hydrogen, and then I had opportunities to run my own company in 7 months. So me continue to educate, doing what I do, allowed me to be where I'm at today. 8 years ago, I went out on my own, started my own companies, which is H2 Minutes, where it's basically just a online video series on YouTube where I teach about molecular hydrogen therapy and its surrounding sciences in a simple and easy format. There should have been a video you guys maybe could have seen today. Just put one out on arthritis. And so I've been wanting to do this video for literally like 5 years. We finally got around to it. So I put out these videos to teach and help people basically digest this information, because not all of us are going out and reading medical publications every day. Can't even understand the jargon that's in there half the dang time. And so we kind of repurpose it, repackage, and then put it out and disseminate that information for everyone. And then I also do H2 Hub, and that's why you see all these products and things behind me. I have a ton of hydrogen products, but H2 Hub was really birthed out of a necessity. I started to educate and produce these videos, and because I started to produce these videos, I had everyone wanting to know what I used. What do you use to get the effects? Well, what do you use? Well, you use a Kangen units, use water ionizers. What do you use? The tablets. So I had to figure out a way to help people, but do it objective. The reason for that is that there's a bunch of people that says, hey, go get this because I said so, because I said it's good. And there's nothing about what I've been doing that's just based on opinions. Everything is substantiated with scientific evidence. So I need to find a way to help people navigate to the products that are actually going to give you
to do a screen record
that are H2 levels that are comparable to the scientific literature. And so what's being administered in human clinical studies. And so I went ahead and developed hydrogen performance standards that are based on the studies. Went through all of them and picked out the things that were most important, and then I started testing hydrogen products against those standards to see which ones match up, which ones don't. And so I've tested over 100 hydrogen products. There's a lot of products, and we continue to get many more. And right now we only recommend, well, it should be about at the end of the year, probably be 35, maybe pushing 40. So that should give you an indication that 100 to 40, not everyone makes it. There's I send these companies test reports, and they get to see what is good about their product and what needs to be improved about their product to be able to be recommended by us. So that's what I do on an everyday basis. Educate and help people. I have medical doctors contact me, the everyday consumer, or just, the newcomer who doesn't know anything about hydrogen. And so I get to help people all around the world learn about hydrogen therapy and help them with navigating the market. So that's my story.
Well said. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So as a lot of us here have come from the past with alkaline water technology. We always heard about, hey, there's all these plates in there and you need to have more plates, you have more electricity. And then you come to the hydrogen technology and you just have an anode and a cathode and then a membrane in between. So can you kind of educate us on why that plates are not important and why having a PEM SPE membrane is the most important aspect?
Yeah, sure. So I guess to kind of start off is like you said, everyone here, well, most of us, I would say, are aware of alkaline ionizer technology, which is the core or the heart of it would be its water cell, right? And so many of them are marketed to have, 7 plates, 8 plates, 10 plates, 15 plates, get all the plates you want. But unfortunately, even in that understanding of just adding more plates means better water or better machines. It's not entirely true. And when you actually look at how these systems are put together and what's the most important aspect, which is the hydrogen gas, you start to see that there are many limitations when it comes to alkaline water ionizers, especially the standard versions. Now there's newer versions on the market that are more the new gen, but they still have issues. And so we can go through some of these potential limitations, and I'm gonna go down through some of the, I would say, the more popular ones, the easier ones to understand. We don't want to get into some of the chemistry or whatever, but we can go down some of the popular ones. So first things first is that with alkaline water technology or alkaline ionized water technology, is highly dependent on source water conductivity or the minerals in your water to produce hydrogen gas. And this already sets us up basically sets us up for the technology not to be universal, because everyone's source water is different. So what happens if you have a whole home RO system? Well, now you got to figure out what to do with the minerals, right? Well, it needs the minerals. Or what happens if a lady's on well water, or what happens, there's multiple different scenarios. Well, it turns out with this alkaline water technology or alkaline ionized water technology, if you don't have more than 60 TDS, you will not produce hydrogen gas very well. And the hydrogen gas is going to be limited, that production that you're actually producing. These systems don't have what's called dissolver technology. So that kind of gets us into some characteristics of hydrogen gas. Hydrogen gas is has a very low solubility in water. It means it doesn't like to dissolve into water. And so with this in mind, because it doesn't like to dissolve into water, things that like to dissolve into water would be like salt or sugar, right? You stir it and all of a sudden it disappears. It's very, very water soluble. Hydrogen is not. And so if it's going to have a limited production of hydrogen gas, you need to maximize that gas to get dissolved into the water. These systems don't have that. Whereas the newer technologies do. They have dissolver technologies, and we can go over that a little later. But and so with this in mind, the first things first is that the systems that utilize alkaline ionized water technologies are highly contingent or dependent on the TDS or total dissolved solids of the water. The second thing would be what I just started to touch on, which is they struggle to dissolve the gas into the water. So they don't implement any dissolver technology. So what they actually rely on is what's called water turbulence. So within these water cells, you're going to have plates stacked up, cathodes and anodes, cathodes and anodes, cathodes and anodes. They're all going to fill up with water. All the cathodes are going to come out the top hose, and that's going to be your alkaline water that has the hydrogen gas dissolved into it, right? Or maybe. and then you're going to have all your anodes is going to go to the acidic water, right? And they're going to funnel out of the bottom of the system. Well, that's all they're doing is running water over the plates. There's nothing else that's helping the hydrogen gas dissolve. So basically, if the water runs over the plate just right, with the right flow rate, catching hydrogen nanobubbles off the plate, or I should say hydrogen microbubbles, nanobubbles, off the plate at the right time, then it will actually dissolve the gas into the water. But most of it's wasted. So for instance, I'll put out some information about the KANGEN unit you guys might not necessarily know, right? So you take your KANGEN SD501. Your KANGEN unit, SD501 on the 9.5 setting is going to be running at its cell, is going to be applying 12.4 volts at 5.4 amps. And what you need to know about that is basically, if you translate that current and actually mathematically calculate the hydrogen concentration that could be generated, with that amperage, if you had like a flow rate, let's say you had it coming out of the system at 2 liters per minute, at that flow rate, you could actually, if you dissolve 90% of the gas, 90% of the hydrogen gas that was generated, that system could actually dissolve 1.6 ppm of hydrogen gas in the water, which is saturation. That'll be great. Unfortunately, because it only relies on, well, one, there's inefficiencies, but because it only relies on water turbulence, it loses 85 to 90% of the gas. This is why the water's cloudy. This is why you see so much bubbles. It's because dissolved hydrogen gas is invisible to the naked eye. You cannot see it. Even micro bubbles you can't see with the naked eye. So the gas that you are seeing is all undissolved hydrogen gas. It's all wasted. It will not make it to the human body. So this is why these systems end up producing levels from 0.1 ppm, 0.5, lower levels of hydrogen gas dissolved into the water. And because most of it's wasted. So that would be the second issue, would be the dissolver technology. Now, I would also say number 3 would go over plates. So we're going to go over the plates of these systems. So you'll notice that, say KANGEN units will have solid smooth plates, and some other units will have mesh plates in these water ionizers. And they'll say, well, my mesh plates are better, and well, my smooth plates are better, right? And so you're going to go over the plates. Well, these plates details do have an impact on the amount of hydrogen gas that can be produced and the dissolved hydrogen concentration. So one of the kickers here is that with solid smooth plates, like a KANGEN unit, they're actually going to have some serious problems with their efficiencies in producing hydrogen gas, because the electric current that flows through these plates doesn't have a direct path to follow. So the little electrons going through the plates don't have an actual pathway to go back over to the power supply. So this can be a problem in the generation of hydrogen gas. Also, because it's a smooth plate, that means its surface plate morphology or texture means that it's smooth. So if you looked at it through a microscope, it's going to have less peaks and valleys, right? In these little cavities or peaks and valleys, it increases surface area. So basically, in essence, you have more places for hydrogen gas to be generated. Well, okay. Well, does that make the mesh plates better? Well, somewhat, because the mesh plates actually do allow for a direct path for the current to follow through the mesh plates. And this is why even within newer technologies, let's say with HIM systems, which we'll get to, I only got one more point after this, which we'll get to, that they use mesh plates too. So there's something with the mesh plates, and then so basically what it is that these mesh plates tend to have a pathway for the current to follow. They also end up basically having their more rougher surface. So their surface plate morphology is better. So which means it increases the surface area, which means you're going to generate more hydrogen gas with this plate. And you don't have to have such a big plate. So you don't have to have such big cells, right? But all of this can end up backfiring on you because of scaling issues. So with the mesh plates, because you got more surface area now, it's better for hydrogen production, and it's better for the electrons to follow, or the current, right, to go through the plate, but it also has more peaks and valleys for calcium to stick to. So you're going to run into issues with these newer gen water ionizers. Well, and also the smooth plates, regardless, because they're going to increase the pH of the water, calcium likes to precipitate out of water, or basically come out of the water. So you can see it, the white flakes that you can see in the water. This is calcium carbonate. It likes to come out, and this takes effect at 8.4 pH. So as soon as the water hits 8.4 pH, calcium will start to precipitate. And I mean, with most of these systems, that's like the first level. You get the lower level, and you get 9.5, and you get the higher ratio. You get the higher pH levels. So at about 8.4 pH, I mean, you're right at the start, even on the low levels, you're going to start causing calcium precipitation. Well, once calcium gets on the plates, guess what happens with the hydrogen gas? Doesn't dissolve. Remember what I just said? So those systems have water running right over the plates. If the water doesn't run over those plates just right, it's almost, the way I like to call it, it's a sweet spot. So if you don't find the sweet spot that'll pull that hydrogen off the plates just right, it won't dissolve hydrogen gas well. But if it's got calcium over the smooth plates or the mesh plates, a microscopic layer, even it can be microscopic, hydrogen won't dissolve into the water properly. So this is why with these water ionizer systems, people can say, well, my system's running great. I can still see the visible bubbles. Because what will end up happening is none of the nanobubbles or the smaller hydrogen gas bubbles won't dissolve into the water, but hydrogen gas will still be generated and coalesce into bigger bubbles, which you can still see. So the problem is that they think they're getting good hydrogen gas in the water, or maybe it's still producing some therapeutic water because they can see the bubbles, but they don't have any detectable levels of hydrogen gas because it's covering the plates. And so this is a big limitation with its plate and its ability to dissolve hydrogen gas with this type of technology. It's a big limitation for it. The next thing I would say is power. Power is a big problem when it comes to water ionizers. It's a limitation. And for the reason for that is I'll try to keep it simple and not get into some of the actual chemistry of it. But basically, it's because these systems have to use higher levels of power because there's going to be a greater level of resistance in those cells. Meaning, this is why you need the minerals, right? The mineral is there so that it can lower the resistance so the electrons can flow through the cell and produce hydrogen gas. Well, because these systems have, larger gaps between their cathode and anode, that means that the resistance is going to be higher. Well, that means they need to use more voltage and more power. And so this is why you typically, with these systems, you're going to see big power supplies in these systems. The unfortunate part is with more power means you're going to generate hydrogen faster, which means the bubbles are going to coalesce, means bigger bubbles. Well, we don't want big bubbles. We want small bubbles. The smaller the bubbles, the better. So there's research that's actually showed that even with, let's say, alkaline water ionizer technology or water ionizers, hydrogen gas typically dissolves into the water at about 600 nanometers to about 1,000 nanometers, right? So let's say you take your life ionizers, your Tiants, your Kangen waters, your whatever, right? That 0.5 ppm that might be dissolved, it might be dissolved at 800 nanometers, right? So that's going to be the level of hydrogen gas. That's going to be the size of the nanobubbles that's going to be generated that can be dissolved, but it's only going to be limited amounts of it because most of the bubbles is going to end up being too big to dissolve into the water because they got too much power. And this is the distinction between, now there's a distinction between this technology and the newer technology because what they use is smaller power supplies. They can do that because of this special membrane we're going to talk about. And so basically, too much power is a bad thing. And what most people didn't realize is that you'll see these companies talking about, we have switch mode power supplies and we have this big power supply and this big power supply. And if you had any bit of good knowledge around the subject, you would say, well, you just tell me your system's bad. Might as well just tell me you're not going to make good dissolved hydrogen gas because the bubbles are going to, because of the rate of production that the bubbles can be produced, it won't actually, those bubbles are going to be too big to dissolve into the water. And with newer technologies, you can actually get smaller scale of nanobubbles. We can talk about that too in a minute. So these are probably the 4 top points that you should take away. This technology has significant limitations when it comes to producing hydrogen-rich water. The reason for it is that they were never actually designed to produce hydrogen-rich water. They were designed to produce alkaline water. And they figured out that hydrogen is the sole exclusive therapeutic agent of any type of electrolyzed reduced water system, any type of alkaline ionizer water type system. Hydrogen is exclusively the therapeutic agent. And so now, instead of actually updating the technology, what they do is they just co-opt the hydrogen message and say, hey, we got hydrogen too. Look at our bubbles. And they don't actually update the technology because they didn't update the technology. There's a vast amount of limitations with that technology for producing consistent hydrogen water or H2 concentrations within the water with independent of source water conditions. So independent of anyone's source water conditions, you can have RO water, you can have normal tap filter, tap water, whatever. Independent of those conditions, that's like the technology should be able to produce consistent hydrogen water with consistent H2 concentrations in that water. Unfortunately, those technologies do not. And so that's the limitations. It doesn't mean that these systems in any scenario, with the right source water conditions, don't produce therapeutic levels. I literally came on here and told you guys that I felt some benefits, and it was part of my story. I was drinking this water, and I have got my own system, my own KANGEN unit, and I was drinking it fresh, and I noticed benefits and everything else. And we were sharing water out of a water store that we had in Wichita, Kansas. It actually wasn't mine. I was just working in I wasn't working, but I was sharing that space with my wife's cousin and his business partner. And I was sharing gallons out of there. So turns out that when I went to measure the dissolved hydrogen concentrations from the system at the store, which was making wonderful, amazing bubbles everywhere in the gallon, it had no detectable levels of dissolved hydrogen gas. I was heartbroken. I'm out here sharing and talking about hydrogen with these people, and I realized that it's not dissolving the gas. And so that really set me on a pathway till now to do what I'm doing so that people can make sure that they're going to invest their money and know they're going to get technologies that actually basically produce hydrogen gas. So that's the major takeaway. Power is a big issue, big limitation. they like to popularize it. Dissolving the gas and producing the gas is a big issue. They're highly dependent on source water conditions, the minerals in the water. If you don't have them, you won't produce hydrogen gas. And also, hydrogen is not very soluble in water, right? So, if you're not producing very much of it, you need to maximize how much you get into the water. And so these are just a common common limitations with water ionizer technologies.
Well said. That was a lot to take in. We are recording, so we can go back and take notes on that. So
Yeah.
then we come to I use the ORP meter and it says it's got a negative 700. Tell us why that measurement is not an accurate measurement, please.
Yeah, so ORP, oxidation reduction potential. Yeah, that was a big one. So the issue is ORP, flat out, ORP is not a helpful tool when it comes to hydrogen-rich water. The reason for that is because it can detect the presence of hydrogen gas, but it cannot accurately measure the H2 concentration. And ORPs are highly contingent or dependent on the pH of the water, right? Or highly contingent on the pH of the water. So because it's looking at the ratio between what affects the pH of the water and the hydrogen gas in the water, and what I just said is that, you can have a very small amount of hydrogen in water, but what can determine the pH of the water can be huge, right? So with these systems, right, they're making a high pH of water, and pH is a logarithmic function. Basically, it's a function, it's a power of 10. So you keep going up, right? It's big jumps. So you have this, you basically have pH influencing the ORP far more than the H2. So a simple way of understanding this would be the ORP meters or ORP in general can go negative, will be like a negative 300 or negative 200. That negative, it going negative because the ORP is detecting the presence of hydrogen gas, but its extent, negative 700, is truly based on the pH. So maybe I'll give you this fact that might blow you guys' mind. Okay. So how much hydrogen gas is needed to produce a negative ORP? It is astronomically low. I mean, crazy low. And so it is literally 1/1,000,000th of a ppm. Of a ppm, or 100,000th of a milligram of hydrogen dissolved into the water. It's crazy low amounts that's needed for the RP to be able to detect it and say, oh, there's a reducing agent in the water, go negative. But those type of levels won't help you. There's like 10 million more, there's like 10 million times the amount of hydrogen gas dissolved into, let's say, the Hydro Deluxe. That can be therapeutic for you based on like what I just said with the ORP. So it takes a tiny, infinitesimal amount of hydrogen dissolved into the water actually make the meter go negative. But the primary reason it goes so negative is due to the pH. And because of that, because pH has such a big influence on ORP, you shouldn't use it. You can use it in the sense of saying that there is a reducing agent in the water. It can detect the presence. It will go negative and say, oh, well, see, we got negative ORP. That's great. But the negative 700, negative, 900, negative whatever, that doesn't help us a lot at all. In fact, if you removed all the other variables, if you moved everything, the minerals and everything else is in the water, the pH, that 1/1,000,000th of a ppm would produce a negative 260 ORP. That's a crazy low amount that can still generate a 200 negative ORP, right? So I think that's, in light of that type of technology, it's better to use something like H2 Blue, which can do the same thing. Like, I don't know how much you guys know about H2 Blue, but H2 Blue, I have H2 Blue everywhere, by the way. Let's see if I have one here. H2 blue is a reagent for testing dissolved hydrogen concentration within water. And this reagent can also detect the presence of hydrogen gas within the water. So you can just use your beaker. See if I have one. Of course I have one. You can use your beaker, fill it up with some hydrogen water, take a drop of H2 blue, and then do a little swirl, and this reagent will turn clear if hydrogen gas is dissolved into the water. If no hydrogen gas is dissolved in the water, it will remain blue. And so you can easily just demonstrate with people. My water has hydrogen gas in it. Drop a drop in it, goes clear. They go, wow, what's going on with that? And then you get to explain to them that this can measure the concentration of hydrogen gas dissolved into the water, and it can detect the presence of hydrogen gas dissolved into the water. Therefore, it replaces your ORP meter.
So let's go to the pH, because I know a lot of people here are confused. Well, I see a comment over here. Well, so many people got transformed because of KANGEN water, and we all thought it was the alkalinity of the water, but comes to find out it's hydrogen. There's not much hydrogen in the KANGEN water. So can you explain why the alkalinity or the pH is not going to be changing your pH of your body?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost is because water is not a buffer. And so what I mean by that is water does not have the ability, everyday normal water does not have the ability to resist acid or a base changing it, which is really good. We need water to be like that. What these systems produce is, or let's say, for example, like you said, KANGEN units, right? Like we just use that for our little example. A KANGEN water unit on 9.5 setting might produce, this water, or, and it might not even be at 9.5. It could be a 10 pH at whatever, right? So let's say it's at 10 pH. Well, because it doesn't have any buffering capacity, meaning there's no agent within the water that can resist acid from changing the pH of the water. Therefore, the pH is not going to be the thing that actually produces the therapeutic effect, because it's likely it might not survive your stomach. It definitely won't survive your gut, and it surely won't survive your blood. Your blood is regulated to be at 3.65 to 7.45 pH. It is regulated to be there. If it's not, you can run into serious issues, like alkalosis or acidosis, and at higher beyond these things, even proteins begin to denature. And so we need to make sure that that water that you consumed at a 9.5 pH is going to be buffered by your blood. Your blood's going to change it to be 7.3. So how is it the pH that's doing all the stuff to the cells? Doesn't logically follow. But what does follow is that water can contain hydrogen gas. As I said, it doesn't mean because of these limitations that it can't produce therapeutic concentrations of hydrogen gas in water. What we know right now is that 0.5 ppm is like the minimum, basically, therapeutic level of hydrogen that can be in the water. So if you drink enough of it, what you'll actually end up doing is you'll increase the hydrogen levels in your body enough to produce a therapeutic effect. And this is what we've seen with hydrogen gas, is that hydrogen is what's classified, the fancy term for it is a gaseous signal modulator. That's the fancy term, or a signaling molecule, meaning that it regulates signals, pathways in our cells. And what we know about these type of therapeutic agent that hydrogen gas is, as long as you get its concentration above what's minimum for your body, right? Each one of us is producing hydrogen gas. Today, all of you produce hydrogen gas. You produce it by your gut. And you're eating your food, right? Your non-digestible carbohydrates, these things, right? Your fibers, and you're going to produce hydrogen gas. Well, about 14% of that hydrogen gas is going to go through your intestinal barrier in your intestines, get into your systemic circulation through the venous system, and it's going to form a basal level of hydrogen in your blood. This is why if we were to do a breath test on all of you right now, you would have some form of hydrogen gas coming out when you breathe right now. Well, that basal level is the level that your cells get used to. So it's not therapeutic. Your cells just very used to it. They just built a tolerance to it, right? But if you drink Kangen water, even if it has a small amount, and let's say you have, your basal level is, let's say let's say it's 5 micromolars of hydrogen gas dissolved into your blood. Okay, well, you drank Kangen water at 0.5 ppm, and you drank 3 liters of that or that day. Well, you just actually kicked that level up, that 5 micromolars to 7. That was enough to induce a therapeutic effect on your body. And so now you're getting benefits. But the problem is that when you don't take care of those machines and you're not getting that same type of hydrogen levels, then guess what? You're not going to induce this favorable effect to get this reaction, and your body starts, responding to hydrogen. And this is why many of us got experiences from these machines. We were able to induce a therapeutic effect by providing enough hydrogen gas. Didn't mean that more wouldn't have been better. This is why it's phenomenal that some of the stories people have heard is with like maybe some limited amounts of hydrogen. Like if they actually had like a higher dose, and this is what we see in the scientific literature too, is that hydrogen appears to be dose dependent, meaning if you have a higher dose, there's a greater therapeutic effect. So instead of getting that 7, if you got 10, 12, or 20, the anti-inflammatory effect will be amplified. And this is how it works. And so like a way that you could think about hydrogen would be like your Wi-Fi, right? So let's just use our Wi-Fi as example. If you move far enough away from your router, the signal is going to be low, but you still might get some internet, right? You still might have something there for it to function. But the closer you get, the stronger that signal, right? It's the same thing. With these systems, you might get, right? Like the KANGEN units might be, right? The system that got you a little farther away from like your actual internet source. But the closer you get a greater dose, you're going to get a bigger signal, right? Things are going to happen faster. And this is what we see with hydrogen gas. And so this is why these systems maybe produce therapeutic effects for some of us, and why they didn't for others, because of how hydrogen works. But there's one thing for sure that it wasn't the pH.
Yay, thank you so much. And a test that Dr. Tyler, he brought up, said you can take baking soda and put in water, and you can take Kangen water, and you can test, both with the pH drops. You can put a little lemon in the Kangen water, you can put a little bit of lemon in the water that has the baking soda, and it does not change the baking soda water, but it changes the Kangen water because it's not the stable buffer.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So there's an actual video on H2 Minutes where I go through all of this, and I do a demo, right? I kind of, we all know about the demos, but I do the demo and I actually show this effect as well. You're talking about taking a cap full of Sprite, putting it in a whole glass of, 9.5 pH, hydrogen water or whatever, and it nukes the whole thing. And then you think your blood won't do the same or something like that. Like, no, like it won't work that way. So you guys should check that video out. It's really good because we actually do some other examples with baking soda to show that the opposite is equally true, that you can have a alkaline water produced with baking soda, and you can put an acid in it and it will fight to keep itself alkaline.
Is that the one called pooled? Don't be pooled. Like
oh, don't be fooled. No. It's
you'll have to share that one, and I'll put it in the group.
Yes. Yeah. No, like I have to share it.
Great.
I
I
can
know
share it to you.
we're coming up on our time. We only have 8 minutes left. It goes so fast.
What?
So I know those of you that have questions, don't worry, write them down. We asked you to send it to us in an email and then he would be answering them. But for next time we have him on, just go ahead and if you come up with a question, put it down.
Yeah, well, I mean, even if I mean, I know those emails, I think you might have sent me a few. I mean, I could do those rapid fire if you want.
Oh, no, because I have one more question here that
All right.
all of the most important videos that we found were important for you guys, we put into the training for the affiliates. So once you log into the back office, you're going to see all of his most popular videos there for you, so you can go check those out. So if it's not the alkalinity, then of course it's got to be the microclustering. You got to tell us about the microclustering, why it doesn't exist.
Oh man. Okay. Go watch my video. I'm just playing. No, but yeah, no. So really do go watch my video. But yes, the notion of fixed microclusters is not supported by any substantial scientific research at all. In fact, it actually goes against what we've seen about how water works. So water is actually held together by what's called hydrogen electrostatic bonds. And these bonds are called van der Waal forces, whatever, but basically they're weak and they can easily be broken. And this is where water fits into our glass, or whatever we put it into, right? And when we pour it, right, it can be broken. So the interesting thing is researchers have actually found out how these hydrogen bonds work and how water molecules break and reform these bonds. And so one thing to keep in mind, we want to talk about microclustering, but they've seen that these van der Waal forces between water molecules breaking and reforming bonds, they do so at 160 billion times a second. 160 billion. So water is always in flux. Even your waters you see sitting on your counter, you in your glass, you're like, oh yes, it's just water sitting in there. There's a whole lot of action going on. They're not sticking to one another. They're actually re-breaking and reforming bonds 160 billion times a second. It's remarkable. But this is really important because it allows for water molecules to move and actually get into our cells really well. And so one of the issues with the microclustering idea as popularized online or in marketing and all kind of stuff is that we kind of talk about hydrogen being or water molecules being in a bulk phase, and then it goes through the water ionizer, and then it gets restructured into smaller clusters, and then these smaller clusters can actually get into the cell better. Well, it really doesn't work that way because of aquaporins, and a cluster of water molecules is actually bigger than what the actual aquaporins will allow. So it doesn't even make sense when it comes to biology. So an aquaporin really is the water channel or a water pump for our cells. And so this is how water moves in and out. Well, it does so in a single file fashion, one molecule at a time. So even if it was to be microclustered, let's say even if the idea was true, it would still have to be broken up smaller into single water molecules to get in at a time. And so people would think, well, maybe this is not efficient. Well, that's not looking at biology, because biology has shown that water molecules can move through aquaporins in a single file fashion at 3 billion water molecules a second. It can they get in and out of there. A lot of them. And so this is why a lot of these concepts around microclustering just doesn't work, because of what we've actually seen about the properties of water itself and how our cells work, and how their and their relationship to one another. If water molecules were actually clustered, like popularized online, it would actually move, and water would have the consistency of molasses because they're actually stuck together. They're stuck, and that's what it means to be structured or to be clustered together. They're stuck. When water is cooled down, they do become more microclustered in that sense because they turn into ice. And so this is like, this is why it's really important to not just go along with what's called the bandwagon fallacy. And the bandwagon fallacy is this: because many people say it and because many people believe it, therefore it's true. It's not true. It's not how it always works. And so we need to make sure that what we're doing, if we're going to be educating people about water and their health, everything, we need to do our best to understand how these things work, or rely on really good sources who know how these things work. And so you can't go wrong with looking at my videos or going to read Tyler's articles or any of that, because both of us are doing our best at trying to bring you accurate information that's not based on opinions, but based actually on testing, studies, to figure out how these things work independent of our cognitive faculties and what we want to do, subjective opinions about it. So that's what I would say to that question.
And the best part about that is when you speak about science and certainty in the studies, then you don't run into the doctors like, oh, yeah, right. She doesn't know what she's talking about. This pH, this microclustering, and automatically discredits you. When you speak from the authority, when you speak from the studies, it's like, oh, wow. And then they do the research like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. And so that's probably the most beneficial thing here is just talk about the hydrogen. And, you know, we don't need to talk about the alkalinity because it's not important. We don't talk about the microclustering because it's not important. And so that brings us to the 7 o'clock hour already. I can't believe it.
Wow.
I know, but I'm going to bring Taiwan into our Facebook group. So if you guys want to connect with him more, he'll be in the group. I'm sure if there's any videos that you want, you let him know. I'm sure he'd just be happy to do them. And thank you so much, Taiwan, for all of the information that you give out there to the public and just being a supporter to me and the team and the growing, you know, team that we have all over the world now. So thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, let's go ahead and conclude, and we'll see you all on Monday for product training and sales training. And then we'll see you next Thursday for Bob Citroneri, who is the world-renowned author, talking about, of course, hydrogen. So thanks again, guys, and have a fantastic weekend. And congratulations to all of you that are out there crushing it in your sales. I know we got Betty on. That's awesome to see all of you. So appreciate you, and we'll see you soon.
See you guys later. Hope you enjoyed it.
Yes, we did.
Thank you, Tyler. Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you.